All right, everybody, welcome. This is our final session in this amazing DEI webinar series we've been doing throughout September. It's titled Re-Impact Nothing About Us Without Us and Why Your Best Customers Should Be Your Co-Creators. So we're going to focus on why and how DEI should be involved around business innovation, accessibility, and success financially. So a little bit about me. I am Michael Streffery. It's been an amazing journey bringing you this four-part series. With over 20 years experience, I've been doing DEI strategies at companies like Realtor.com, Ubisoft, and Elevance Health, and more. Even I think my first experience was at Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta in 2005. So it's been a fun journey. I've consistently witnessed this. The organizations that thrive aren't just talking about inclusion internally or window dressing their career pages to look diverse. They're fundamentally reimagining how they create value with their diverse communities and not just for them. And so to learn more about me, please, my LinkedIn profile is going to be put into the chat box. I'd love to connect with you. Thank you, Chris, for sharing. The breakthrough moments always have happened when we've moved from assumption to co-creation. So we've invited voices we aim to serve into the design process itself. So today, we're going to be exploring how this principle scales across industries. How do we move beyond build it and they will come to build it with them and they will thrive? So I'm thrilled to be joined by Emily, Genevieve, Shalita, and Chris in the support background. Thank you so much for joining me today. These are amazing leaders who are already have history in putting these principles into practices and seeing some remarkable results. So today's event is brought to you by the DEI Professionals in Transition Support Group. Here's a little bit more information about who we are, what we do, who can join, and who this space is for. Oops, sorry about that. We would love, if you're interested, if you're not involved, please join us. What we're looking for, you don't need to be a diversity, equity, inclusion professional in transition. We have a lot of people who are head of talent attraction, head of talent development, HR directors who are there to support us, to provide job opportunities and share open jobs, to help us prepare, review resumes and LinkedIn profiles. So if that's you and you are a diversity, equity, inclusion professional in transition yourself, or you're an ally to the group, we would love to have you join. We'll put the link right into the chat. Also, what sets this amazing webinar apart from other webinars is we're not a sales or marketing team trying to sell you anything. We are personally here to provide our skills and expertise to give you information that is relevant for diversity, equity, inclusion in 2025. So throughout the entire month, we've been bringing together some amazing professionals you can see here on the slide for this four-part series. So we started off with a pre-event survey, which is another good thing that really set this apart. And we were asking questions of how did DEI get weaponized in 2025? What's within our control for change? What should we do differently? What would we do differently if we could do it all over again? And that survey was pretty robust. We have a fabulous conversation in the beginning of September. Then the second week, we talked about employee resource groups and how they can evolve going forward. Last week, we talked about the talent lifecycle, which was probably like 5 webinars in one. So we probably in the future will be expanding that out. But we talked about everything from sourcing, recruiting, hiring, professional development, succession planning, exit interviews, everything. And so there might be opportunity for us to really go deeper in the future for those. And this week is about business impact. And so here's what we're going to accomplish today. First, we're going to ground our discussion in real data, the survey insights you shared about the DEI and business impact. So we're building on what you actually experiencing, not just theory. Second, we're going to spotlight how companies are winning by leveraging DEI to innovate their products, services, and customer experiences. And we're going to be sharing some real examples of inclusion driving business results. Third, we're going to get real honest about the obstacles you're facing today and explore concrete strategies to overcome them, because knowing what's not working is just as important as celebrating it. And finally, we're going to look ahead into the future-ready approaches that keep DEI relevant, resilient, and growth-driven in an ever-changing business landscape. And by the end of the hour, you're going to leave with actionable insights, real examples, and a clear path forward for making co-creation a business advantage. And I am also asking for a little grace. We accepted a beautiful baby boy home. His name is Grayson on Friday, and I'm running on fumes right now. So thank you all. I'm just a really proud papa right now, and I wanted to share that in this event. So also in our agenda, this is how we're going to spend our time. We're going to start by introducing the panelists very soon, these four incredible professionals. Then we're going to dive into our survey findings together. Then they've prepared some business impact examples of where some organizations that have gotten it right, and or examples of how they've really stood out from a DEI lens with measurable results. And then the heart of our time will be a deep discussion with our panel about what it actually takes to move from intention to impact when co-creating diverse customers. So we will be stopping around 12:55-ish to do speed round Q&A. So if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We would love for you to stay engaged throughout the entire event if possible. Before we dive in, I also want some quick intentions for our time. We are really about creating safe spaces. So what do we mean by that? Practicing honesty, caring, respect, responsibility. Try to be present. If possible, try to distract all those emails that are popping in. Stay curious with a growth mindset, even when we're going to be challenging assumptions. We've promoted this and made this an open space for those who believe in DEI, as well as those who might be skeptics to DEI, and we want to be respectful in our conversations. And then let's celebrate the win. So if you hear something, say something awesome, like Emily, that was fabulous, put it in the chat. I'm asking my panelists to please keep an eye on the chat so that way we can keep you involved and engaged throughout the whole conversation. So now it brings me great pleasure to highlight who's been helping volunteering, just not in this webinar, but our entire series. Christopher McCormick, thank you so much. He's standing out behind the scenes and will be managing our chat, kicking mean people out of this event if they need to be kicked out. Hopefully that doesn't happen to anyone.
Everybody's going right now.
We'll be sharing links to some of the relevant content. So we're like some of the business impact examples, we'll have links in there if you want to learn more about what that company is doing for DEI. He's going to be sharing that. So Christopher, I'd really want to give you a huge shout out because you have been involved heavily in all of the events. You not just only presented in the talent one last week. So I really want to publicly say that I see you as a true friend. And I'm really happy and to have you as part of my life. So thank you for being part of this project. For today's event, please briefly tell us hi and what you think about the entire webinar series and what you're most excited about for today's webinar.
Thank you, Michael. I wouldn't kick any of you out. It's wonderful to be with you. It's wonderful to have this community and to have the listening that you all bring. So thank you for that. That's why I'm here. And also just the web series was really developed in honor of us learning from each other and understanding how can we evolve this work? How can we really make this evolutionary, revolutionary as it could be? And then today's topic I'm most excited about because I really do believe that when you say your DEI is canceled or DEI is dead or whatever, the thing about DEI that really makes the biggest difference is the business impact. And when you can tie it to a business outcomes, the business strategy, that makes the most sense. So we save the best for last. We saved the best topic for last. We saved the best ladies here to present to you today for last. So it's very exciting to be here, very exciting to welcome them to this topic, and they're going to give you some great examples of how DEI has made a true impact for organizations. So get ready.
Well, Emily, Shalita, and Genevieve, you better get ready. Keith just set the stage for you. So I'm going to introduce these fabulous ladies alphabetically by first name. So first, I want to start by introducing Emily Nybo, a workplace culture consultant and leadership coach with over 15 years of experience creating transformational change. Emily has led global inclusion programming and spearheaded national award-winning DEI initiatives. And as a consultant, she's driven culture transformation for numerous Fortune 500 clients, bringing a strategic approach that empowers leaders to navigate challenges and implement impactful solutions. And so what sets Emily apart is her ability to humanize challenging topics and create safe spaces for meaningful discussions. And her guiding mantra is, quote, "Let's work together to make work better," unquote. When she's not transforming workplaces, you'll find Emily exploring the world. And she's been to 37 countries, and she's just visited Australia, having seen all 7 continents. Emily, thank you. And thank you. You also jumped in last minute. We had a last minute change on the talent event, and you jumped in and helped us there. So thank you for helping us with both events. So what about today's webinar are you most excited to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I'm excited to be in community and to share a good conversation around how we can make impactful DEI work set legacies, because being impactful and sustainable has to be key in order for this work to continue. And I'm excited to share.
Thank you. Next up, we have Genevieve, who's our co-lead for this event. So Genevieve is a visionary leader who brings holistic wellness and sustainable business strategy. As founder of Jean Bart Social Impact Consulting LLC and Solier Soul Wellness, Genevieve brings 20 years of experience in marketing, corporate sustainability, and community impact. She was recognized for innovative program development and results-driven leadership, particularly in health care equity and social determinants of health. And she received the National Prevention Partner Award from the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors. She helps women of color reconnect with purpose while advising organizations on aligning profit with purpose. At the heart of Genevieve's work is alignment, and whether guiding individuals on their wellness journey as a holistic health and wellness coach or advising organizations as a social impact strategist. She is really, honestly, really good at creating safe spaces and spaces in general where people feel seen, supported, and empowered to thrive. And she actually prepped our webinar today with a fabulous breathing exercise where we just all wanted to go get massages afterwards. Her mindfulness and inclusive wellness practices foster deep, lasting transformation that bridges personal well-being and community impact. Genevieve, thank you for being my co-lead on this project. And please share what you're most excited about today's webinar with the audience.
Thank you, Michael, for that introduction. I'll first start off to say that I'm honored to be with this esteemed panel and this community of DI professionals. I'm most excited to engage in rich conversation about bringing customers and communities into that build process to solve for real unmet needs for customers and communities, while also delivering measurable outcomes, tying it back to the business. And also in keeping DEI relevant, resilient, and also that revenue driver in this new environment. So I'm really excited for this conversation today.
Thank you, Genevieve. And last but not least, we have Shalita Dunvick, an accomplished executive leader with 15 years of successfully driving strategic programs, transformative vendor management, and inclusive workforce initiatives across diverse industries. Shalita's leadership is defined by her ability to bridge vision with execution, building high-performing teams and developing scalable frameworks that achieve operational excellence. And so from advancing supply chain sustainability and supplier diversity to drive revenue-generating initiatives, she consistently delivers results by integrating strategy, operations, and relationship management. Her really impressive recognition includes being named a Modern Healthcare Diversity Leader Rising Star, NMSDC Corporate Catalyst, and Federation of Healthcare Chorus Boyd Award recipient. And whether navigating complex operations or identifying growth opportunities, Shalita brings a versatile, results-oriented approach that emphasizes collaboration, accountability, and exceeding expectations. And Shalita, thank you so much. You've been one of the early adopters of the professional DEI professionals in transition support group. So thank you for being on this journey with me. Can you share about today's webinar, what you're most excited for the audience to hear?
Michael, thank you so much. And I'm excited that we connected early on in our transition, but also in the transition of so many other folks. And I think it's important to note not only the amazing panelists that we have today. I agree with Christopher. I think we are going to have a magnificent conversation today, but also the folks who are joining, whether they are in transition or they are looking for some new ideas and opportunities. I'm excited about the collaboration that can occur, the innovation that absolutely I think will occur, and the connections that I think have possibility here. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to engaging with everyone that is here today.
I always have to remember to unmute myself. So before we dive in today's conversation, I want to take a moment, thank everybody who completed our pre-event survey. I think we had like 90 some people complete it. So thank you. We appreciate the time you took. The purpose of the survey was simple. We wanted to capture real perceptions around DEI in 2025. And our goal was to better understand the current landscape. So where we can see progress, where we can see challenges, where we can see biggest opportunities lie for workplace DEI programs to start evolving from 2025. And so we welcome feedback from across the spectrum, from those who are opposed and skeptical of DEI to professionals and champions who are deeply invested into this work. We appreciate all the feedback that we've received. So we're not, in our first webinar, we went deep into the entire webinar. In this webinar, we're only going to look at some of the questions that are relative to business impact. So our first question is, what do you believe are the main reasons DEI programs have not contributed to business impact or driven product and service innovation? To make it fun, if anybody wants to share your thoughts in the chat, go for it. Do it right there in the chat. But the number one response we received was about 75% is DEI not integrating into business strategy or processes. Second was insufficient data connecting DEI outcomes at about 44%. And then there's a tie between resistance from traditional product service leadership and short-term efforts without sustained focus at 37%. The other question that we wanted to highlight was, what do you believe are the main reasons DEI has not succeeded in driving inclusive marketing and branding efforts? And so number one, overwhelmingly at 47.5%, was fear of backlash or getting it wrong. Number two was inconsistent DEI alignment across channels and partners. Number three, marketing communications teams lacks diversity or DEI expertise. And I've seen that a lot. Like because I've done self-ID campaigns and workplace demographic analyzation a lot. And I've seen marketing and HR tend to be 90% women and 90% white women, right? So marketing communication teams lacking diversity is on par with my thoughts. Number four, lack of accountability or metrics to track DEI impact. And number five, messaging and branding not authentically reflecting diverse audiences. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the slides away for a second and let's start a conversation. I would love to hear from the panel. What are your thoughts on the survey responses and what do you agree or disagree with? Genevieve, will you kick us off, please? Genevieve, you're on mute, my friend.
That always happens somewhere, right? So what jumps out for me in this survey, and it's pretty clear, it's how dominant that top driver is. DEI isn't integrated into business strategy or processes. And I agree. If it doesn't live in strategy or process, it can't move product or the P&L. When it sits outside corporate planning, often it's in HR, it gets decoupled from product roadmaps, funding rhythms, and decision rights. That separation helps to also explain some of the other patterns that respondents flagged in the survey. For example, thin act on data. Usually that happens because it's isn't tracked in the same systems as other key areas of the organization. And so that data gap is real. However, that's fixable. If we first solve for the strategy and the process piece first, then there's an opportunity to really move forward from there. And so with that, I'll ask Emily, what jumps out to you from there?
Yeah, I think it's really alignment. is what it comes down to for me. Is the organization operating in terms of what they say they want to do? And having integrity and having alignment between your company values, how you support and show up in the community, and ultimately how you partner with your customers to make sure that your product is relevant and an ongoing, increasingly diverse market. So I think it's really aligning intention with impact is kind of, and actually doing it. Which is harder said than done. But yeah, that's the first thing that comes to me. So thanks.
Shalita, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I really do think that those survey results really identify what we've observed across a lot of industries, and they kind of reveal what we're seeing in most DEI investments and why they are failing or they're being attacked. I think number one, the response DEI not integrated into business strategy is absolutely on point. Most companies, I think, treat DEI as a parallel initiative rather than a core business strategy. And so it happens to be the afterthought. And I, like Genevieve talked about, I think there is a solution there. And that is something we're going to talk about today, is that customer co-creation models. I think that's going to be important to tap into where the revenue drivers happen to be. Also, for the insufficient data as it relates to the response in number two, I am excited that there is a new task force that has actually been created. It's the Task Force on Inequality and Social Related Financial Disclosures. So what we've seen in ESG is that environmental has been essentially focused on because you can prove it. There's materiality studies and there's data points that you can actually identify and drive. There's KPIs, and that has not been so much so in the S part. So where it comes to DEI and social impact and supplier diversity, it's not been focused on and not been as crucial. Well, this task force, and I think we're putting the link into this task force, is really going to identify some evidence-based data that can be utilized across corporations and across industries to really drive the S factor. So my ask of everyone on this call is to be ready for that, because you're going to be asked within your roles to identify those KPIs that are going to be important and align to your stakeholders and align to the revenue. These are going to be global recommendations. So I'm really excited that this is coming about. Also, I invite you to sign up for it. So if there are opportunities for you to get more information on it, I'm not trying to sell it. I just am excited that it's happening. As it relates to number three, I really think that the resistance and the short-term efforts are really what Emily talked about, the alignment. It's integration. How is DEI integrated into your organization? And is it in the thought process of every leader, of every manager, and of every single person as they do their work on a daily basis? And that, I think, is going to be important. And so when we start to reverse that thought process and identify how we are responsible for driving market penetration in whatever we do in the organization, we then can make sure that we're aligning DEI to that. What I will add, and Michael, you asked this question, is what wasn't in the survey. I think what it does reveal is some symptoms, and there's some really great opportunity for breakthroughs. And some companies are really discovering that there's some opportunity for some authentic partnership across the communities that they serve, and that there can be really greater impact if you reach out to those communities, those customers, and identify where those partnerships can be had.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all. I would love for the audience. Is there something that surprises you about the survey results? Is there something that stood out to you? Go ahead and put it into the chat. We'd love to read it. Also, we asked our panelists to put together some amazing business impact examples. And so they're going to run through, I gave them two each, up to two that they could do. And so Emily's going to go ahead and kick us off.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. So the first example I have is Elf Beauty. If everyone is familiar with Elf Beauty, they have been dedicated since the beginning to make sure that their makeup is accessible from both a price perspective and is environmentally, socially responsible and friendly from the very beginning. So as you read on the slide, you know, there are some real business impacts that they have realized by using this strategy. And during the pandemic, for instance, Elf was one of the first brands that started to partner with influencers on TikTok. And with that, they kind of created this democratizing beauty strategy in which Elf was able to engage in real two-way feedback with their clients and with their fans, as they call it. And if you happen to follow Elf Beauty online, you know, they have a huge following and they really take pride in having this sense of co-ownership in the products they deliver, how they develop, and that type of thing. And it's been highly profitable. And one of the things the CEO has talked about in multiple interviews that that I've seen and read over the past few years is, you know, this was never a DEI initiative. It's just who they are, because they want to make sure that every eye, lip, and face can buy and appreciate their stuff and make the best quality items that they can put out there. With that, they're also one of the only 5 of the I think over 4,000 publicly traded companies that have over 60% women on their board. So they take pride in having diversity across their organization, making sure that every employee's voice is heard because they realize it makes their product better. We can hop on to the next one. Okay, I can't see where the slides are, so I'm assuming we're with Delta now. I am an Atlanta girl, so I wanted to share an example that started with Delta. Delta partnered with the ARC organization to start doing these accessibility trials for individuals on the autism spectrum. So basically, anybody that's traveled, you know just how overwhelming it can be going through TSA, getting on a plane, all of those types of things. And many families that had children or family members that would be completely overwhelmed often weren't even trying to travel. So Delta was like, how can we make the skies friendlier for everyone? And in many Delta hubs, they started in 2019 hosting these familiarization days where they would have mock plane flights where everything from checking your luggage, getting the ticket, walking through the terminal in TSA and boarding the plane, going through those steps. So individuals could, if they've never been on a plane before, try on that experience and make the travel experience not only more familiar, but also less disruptive for the family and other attendees when folks are flying. Delta started it, so had to represent that. But now this program, you will find it in most major airport hubs in the US and 2 in the UK, actually. And the conversation around individuals with sensitivity needs, overstimulation, all of those types of things. There are now many airports that have sensory friendly spaces. And they're starting to increase the conversation of how can we make travel more accessible for everyone. And it's hard to find some data on this, but some of the data that I found was Atlanta and in their Delta and their Atlanta and Minneapolis hub have impacted over 1,500 families in the last 6 years since this program has been live. And since I'm an avid traveler, you know, travel is important to me, and I think everyone deserves the right to see the world. So yeah, those are my two examples of how you can listen to your customer and serve a unique unmet need in a way that serves your business. I would love to hand it to, who's next? Would love to hand it to Genevieve.
Thank you, Emily. In this case study, MasterCard shows how inclusion becomes infrastructure. in 2019, they revamped their cards as far as it was not as a campaign, but a network level feature. And banks like Citi and Bank of America scaled it to millions. And by removing identity barriers, change the behaviors that the P&L really cares about. Higher activation, more usage, better retention, and fewer support escalations. And crucially, this solution was co-created with advocacy groups, cardholders, and it was done through discovery and prototyping and real world testing. And to bring this to life, it required product network engineers, issuer partnerships, risk compliance and legal and customer ops. And so you'll see that, across marketing and communications, working in lockstep together. And these results was a dignity fix that became a loyalty engine and a clear point of issuer differentiation. And in here, DEI delivered value at scale. And so in my next example, IBM really brought purpose to, a core strategy, a core go-to-market strategy. And what you'll see is that a core area is where, developers are building for humanitarian and strategies on the IBM stack, and going from 100,000 developers in 2018 to about over 400,000 in the year 2021, the core business really saw that the impact had a steady pipeline of builders, reusable solution blueprints, and a deployment that showcases IBM's AI and cloud in mission critical contexts that allowed for real metrics such as lowering solution costs and strengthening platform preference. The engine here is co-creation. UN agencies, NGOs, and local communities define the problems. And developers, their teams, they iterated with end users and field pilots, refined the solution until it was production ready. And similar to the MasterCard example, making it real engaged countless groups across the enterprise. This is an example of how DEI was used as an innovation system, diverse talent solving real solutions that ultimately help to also, close deals. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Shalita.
Thanks, Genevieve. So many of us have not had an opportunity to see a wealth manager yet, because you have to have at least $1 to $5 million in investable assets to actually engage with a wealth manager. And we're all working towards that. We're all looking at discretionary income and more. But what if I told you that there's an organization that actually created a specific and dedicated business unit to identify folks like us who are not only growing their discretionary wealth, but others who have started to do so because they saw that they were only focusing on specifically one group of folks, and that group of folks were decreasing while the other group of folks were increasing across the board. And by doing this, it actually helped them to advance their revenue by over $1 billion in just year one. And I'm talking about Wells Fargo, as you all have figured out. In 2017, they made this amazing move to create this dedicated business unit for diverse client segments. And what they were finding out is that as their customers were coming to them and they were looking at the deposits of their customers, they were missing out on women business owners who actually were not only creating businesses, but also growing those businesses. And women-owned businesses are a $2.7 trillion market. They were also missing out on Hispanic and Latino communities, which is a $3.67 trillion market. Black entrepreneurs, which is a $1.8 trillion market, and of course, Asian clients and others that they could actually capture. And by doing so, it would not only create trust within the communities that they serve, but it would also grow, again, their revenue. And they knew this was a great opportunity from a DEI perspective because that community was filled with folks from different backgrounds. They also included the LGBTQ community in this, as they saw not only businesses growing, but the wealth of the LGBTQ community growing too. So what they did is they actually set out to create a program that hired over 13,000 advisors to train them from point A to point B, and to continue to train them and to grow their capabilities. And they did this from the perspective across demographics, including accessibility. They also created some community councils, which I think was so important. And those councils not only spanned this demographic that I talked about of this $8 trillion in combined buying power, they ensured that those folks were sitting next to folks who they had been working with in the beginning to not only provide them with mentoring aspects, but also opportunities to connect and build relationships with them. What they also did is they identified data, so that market intelligence, not only from customer surveys, but also from demographic insights and information across America to identify what this looked like and where it was growing to. And then what they did is they took that US population and identified what would be the upward growth and also what would be the multiplier effect. And so they created this revenue model to pull their customers in, develop this strategy, and then identify how they could not only grow their revenue, but also grow these customer partnerships on an ongoing basis. And with that, they created a new opportunity for staff, and new opportunity for positions within their organization, within the wealth management group. They also created a demographic of wealth management leaders who had not gotten an opportunity in the past. No matter what demographic they were from, they usually would not hire folks that didn't look like those customers who had that high wealth. Now they have identified folks who do look like those customers, and they have this opportunity to guide and support those customers that are coming into their community as a whole, and identifying opportunities to grow them. And as a result, they've not only had a business boom, but they've also grown their staff from a DEI perspective. They sit those folks right within each of those different asset management groups from a DEI perspective, and they continue to grow them so that they can support and help those customers. I'm going to go on to the next one because I know we don't have a ton of time left. And that one is Sephora. I'm super excited about Sephora. And you'll get links to both of these organizations to hear more about them. There's a video for Wells Fargo, and then there's also a video for Sephora. So if you all remember, in 2019, R&B star SZA actually tweeted about being racially profiled at a Sephora store. And as a result, Sephora closed down each of their stores for an entire day. And they did training, cultural competency, but also they collaborated with their customers to understand what the real problem was. That was 400 stores that they decided to close down. And what was happening is that they found that 60% of their shoppers experienced discrimination, 75% of BIPOC customers actually struggled to find representative salespeople. And this was not research that they were getting through data that they had. So what they did is they identified that this was a really great opportunity to not only target their stores and identify where they could really drive and create revenue opportunities, but also bring in suppliers and create opportunities to align to those potential customers and to grab that market that they were missing out on. So customers, what they found, just didn't want diverse products. They wanted to actually collaborate in really great diverse experiences. And so they found that this was a great opportunity to penetrate these markets and as a result, become the preferred organization that everyone goes to when they're looking for any type of beauty products. And this is not just for the LGBTQ community or the Black community. This is also for men in particular. Who are now seeing Sephora as the place to go when they have that need, whether they're buying gifts or whether they are buying personal items for themselves. And as proof of this, they have grown and penetrated their market over $2.3 billion from 2022 to 2023, and that continues to grow. They actually are the largest group in the Louis Vuitton family that has the biggest market penetration year over year since 2023. So what a great shift for them, utilizing their DEI expertise and a strategy to drive revenue.
Oh, I'm on mute. Bingo, if anybody has that card. Those are some pretty awesome examples. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. We're going to go ahead and do some speed questions for discussion. So the first question, Shalita, you're actually going to start us off this time. What shifts do companies need to keep DEI driving impact and innovation in 2025, even with pushback? And how can customers and investors and boards keep them accountable? I'm going to put that question in the chat because we'd love to hear from the audience on what you think and how you would answer that question. Shalita. You might be on mute, Shalita.
Darn it, this is like happening to everybody today. I think those essential shifts are going to be one, that financial materiality integration. It's going to be important to really adopt these frameworks to identify an approach around financial institutions, businesses, and I think just society as a whole, providing evidence-based data and providing that to the boards and investors. I think that's going to be first and foremost to shift and change and create accountability. The second, I think, is really move beyond just compliance. And sharing data related to compliance. You know, how many people did we hire? What do they look like? How many people were promoted? To, you know, how are we actually working with our customers, the folks that pay our bills, to create potential opportunities to capture markets and grow. And then I think data is going to be really, really important too. And creating these market intelligence systems, I think, are going to be really important. And that's a combination of your customers, your employees, your investors, and your boards, and identifying from a DEI standpoint, what are the emerging consumer needs? That can actually be pulled out of conversations that you are having with your staff, with your customers. What are the untapped markets that we haven't gone after? That's going to be important. And then what are the innovation opportunities that most of the time those homogeneous teams tend to miss? And how can we incorporate people who are diverse, who come from diverse backgrounds into these teams so that these things aren't missed and they're actually rolled into the strategy annually? And I'll hand it over to Genevieve for her perspective.
Thank you, Shalita. I think a lot was said there. In today's environment, the shift needed is really identifying a way to lock DEI into that value creation engine and not keeping it in the margins. Similar to how, and I think Shalita, you mentioned this earlier, how organizations have embedded environmental sustainability across operations. This is an opportunity to tie every initiative to hard KPIs that reduce cost to serve or improve conversion, and additionally make those results auditable. Customers should reward brands with public scorecards. Investors must really demand verified metrics and filings, and Boards need to link executive pay to these customer outcomes. The bottom line, when DEI is built into operations and measured on business results, it withstands pushback because it's tangibly creating value for everyone. And so with that, I'll ask Emily. I'll turn it over to Emily for her thoughts here.
Hey, so I think there's been so many great things that have been said since I have come from mostly like the HR and the CSR lens of things. What do companies need to do? First thing, I think they need to do less. Specifically, take a moment and the activities that you're doing, measuring what actually makes an impact, because what gets measured gets done and what gets funded gets done. So by doing less, specifically, I mean, are companies measuring their impact by just like number of warm bodies and hours that went to do a customer service or a community service kind of thing? Or are we looking at the ways in which we are using our talent, our gifts in the communities to enrich them, enrich the pipeline, in which a company ecosystem operates? Like, I'm also going to say do less from a programs perspective around DEI. Stop performative DEI. Simple, not sexy is something we mentioned last week. There was a whole lot of things from a talent perspective that were put in there, but in terms of measure what gets done, to Genevieve's point, hold your executives accountable. What are the elements of your corporate culture and your corporate existence that you say are key to your mission and vision? How are those behaviors aligning, right? And then the second part of this question, what can customers do? I think as customers, we can be conscious consumers because we're going to continue to see it. You know, we've been talking about cancel culture. You see the backlash that's happened with Disney. You know, you saw what happened with Target and a few others I don't need to name on this call. But what can customers, investors, and boards continue to do? Let's make sure that companies are aligning their behavior and their activities with what they say they want. Because if not, it will affect your bottom line in terms of how people invest and grow your business.
I love it. I think we only have time for one question before we get to open Q&A. So if you have some questions you want the panelists to try to tackle, please put them into the chat. All right, one more prepared question. When customers or stakeholders perceive DEI efforts as politically or socially charged, what strategies help companies maintain or build trust while still staying true to inclusive values? So how does customer loyalty or market expansion hinge on accessibility and inclusion, even under risk of backlash? Oof, that's a big question. Chris is going to put it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you too. Everyone, all the audience, go ahead and put your thoughts in this question. We're going to do Emily, then Shalita, then Genevieve. Emily, go.
I'm going to stick with my same two words. What do companies need to do in order to be aligned? Do less. Focus on what you're actually going to do and do it. Start there. And align it to the core operations of your business and how you deliver to your customers. Because if you're able to deliver better and increase that customer experience, solve a unique customer need, ultimately what we've got 5-6 generations, 70% of domestic spending is driven by women, right? There's all of these reasons that align to being able to do impact. And it's not a matter of backlash if ultimately it gets you more money. So do less. I'm going to stick with that.
Shalita.
Yeah. So I will say, listen, political constraints are not going to go away. We have heard people say DEI ebb and flows, supplier diversity ebb and flows. It's just not going to go away. It's going to be consistent. It's just going to come in a different look. One year they're essentially saying ESG is going to go away. The next year they're saying DEI is wrong. So it's going to consistently be there. I think what we have to do is we just have to reframe the way that we actually talk about the value. We talk about diversity having value, but we don't talk about the value creation of diversity. So I think change the narrative as it relates to how you talk about DEI, that it drives value, it creates value, and the way that it does it. And the way that you actually do that is you identify the data. Every person should know what data is in their organization if they are in DEI. So you should be gathering data and you should be identifying innovative ways to align DEI to that data. What are you collecting? What does that look like? And then how do you align DEI to it so that you can get into those conversations? And that way you change it from values to value creation. And then I think you also have to look at the risk mitigation. So Emily talked a bit about what's happening with many companies like Target and others. So if we don't do this, what's the risk that we take? If we do this, what's the risk that we take? And actually share that information on an ongoing basis, because you become a leader and a thought leader in the conversations, as well as you are put into the strategy conversations around what risk looks like and how do we mitigate it. And Genevieve, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Shalita. What I would say here is to really anchor on a simple principle. We build products everyone can use with dignity, and that leaves politics squarely out of service and really leading with the problems that are solved and not slogans. Lastly, it's, we've talked about this, co-creating with people that are effective and pay them, pay them fair market value for their expertise, making sure that you're communicating and closing the loops. We heard what you said, here's what we did, and here is the impact. But from a communications perspective, it's keeping one message across the channels, prepping FAQs so that teams are consistently communicating across the value chain. Really, loyalty follows when there's less higher conversations, more usage, and lower churn. And really, that's about good business, really amongst backlash. It's good service and it's good business. It's good business practice.
All right. Well, with that, let's go to open Q&A. So again, if you have questions, we're going to go to your question for all. Let me see, Christopher, thank you for organizing this. In global enterprise, what are you seeing in terms of how US-based companies are navigating legal requirements and cultural expectations for DEI metrics in EMEA, APAC, and LATAM? So,
I am happy to say that they are pressing forward because there are requirements from a government perspective in those countries to align, whether it's the supply chain or the workforce from a DEI perspective, to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so what I have seen is those organizations that support different geographic regions outside of the US are starting to come together and bring those corporations together to collaborate because they are now focused on that. And what I'm also seeing, even in job applications, is it's very clear that you will travel to these locations. Even though you may be US based, you will be traveling to those locations in order to drive those DEI efforts. And so I'm excited that those countries are not backing down. I'm excited that those corporations are now shifting to ensure that they are meeting those needs. And I think it will be telling as it relates to many of those countries, how they continue to not only drive those potential opportunities, but they also drive those programs that those governments have put in place.
I think that was a robust response. Emily, Genevieve, anything to add? Or you want to jump to the next one?
Yeah, I think the companies in the US that are going to continue to be leading edge in terms of doing values-driven business are going to be the ones that compliance is the bare minimum, right? And I think that companies that are going to be leaning into authenticity, and this kind of gets to the other question, like how are people signaling where their values are with not only operations, but DEI? I think that strategic transparency and alignment of authenticity and storytelling is going to be a key differentiator above compliance. And I think there are certain businesses in the US that are leading with that. And then there are others that are stepping away. So I think and how people storytell with real data is going to be a huge differentiator in the next 2-3 years for sure.
We're going to sneak in one more question before we close. And Chris, thanks for sending it over on the back end. A backlash often leads to minimizing visible DEI work, yet companies with diverse teams often outperform in quality, creativity, and problem solving. So how can leaders ensure diverse perspectives are embedded into research, R&D, customer insights, quality assurance, especially when the outer signal of DEI public programs and branding is under pressure? Who wants to take that one? It's a big
I'll
question. It
jump
takes
in
us a minute
quickly.
to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'll say the short answer
I
for
think
me is take a lens. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Emily.
I was going to say the short answer is just by asking that question and notice who's at the table, who's not at the table. What are we considering? What are we not considering? Just asking those questions, I think, is super basic, but how can leaders start there?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be important to go back to what Genevieve said about executive compensation. Accountabilities are going to be the shift, but writing the right KPIs and accountabilities is where it's going to be important. And so I think in the past, we've left it up to those executives to figure out what their accountability should be. And there is no data behind what they decided that accountability should be. And no one is actually watching it or driving it. And it's not aligned to the strategy. So when organizations really want to drive this work, it's going to start with what am I accountable for every single year, and incorporating that into their annual goals and having data to back up that they actually achieved it. So did I have a diverse voice in R&D? And what did that look like? And what was the outcomes because I had diverse voices in R&D is going to be important. And that's when everyone gets on board to actually drive this. And then you can see what happened to the organization if there was a diverse voice in R&D or in customer insights and more.
Genevieve, I want, as my co-lead, before I go to close, any final words? Any final words for the audience and for the panel?
I would say thank you for this robust conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing the fruition of the insights that were shared today. And just thank you all. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
I agree. And if you want to keep the conversation going, we do some fabulous things with the DEI Professionals and Transition Support Group. So please join us. We are now evolving the program. We're going to do about a 45-minute networking support group conversation weekly, followed by a 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the topic. We might go to 45 minutes of an actual facilitated discussion, either on how can DEI professionals transition or find new jobs, or B, what are the most relevant topics around DEI that we need to stay connected to? And so if you're interested in that, please join the group. Also, thank you. If you've been joining all of the webinars, we'd love to get your feedback. Please don't forget to fill out our survey. The feedback is going to help us determine, do we do more of these? Do we do less of these? If we do more, what do we do differently? So please give us the good, bad, and the ugly. We really appreciate the feedback. And then if you have any specific questions about the series or about the professional support group, please reach out to me, michaelstreffery@gmail.com. I'll get back to you as soon as I can get a little sleep from my beautiful new baby boy. And then thank you to our panelists, and thank you to our fabulous audience. We know that you took time out of the day to be with us, and we appreciate it. And remember, all ships rise and we are stronger together. And thank you all for joining. Have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.